Then a prince. Now a king. With Charles on his 20th visit to Canada, this time it's different. And it's not just the title change. It's his shortest official visit ever, all for the main event, opening a new session of Parliament.
This is an historic honor which matches the weight of our times.
Times when Canada's sovereignty is being undermined by our neighbors to the south.
So is it just a reminder, hey, we're not like you?
I would argue it's a reminder and a warning.
The pomp and ceremony associated with royalty on full display here in Ottawa, but here's why this isn't just any royal visit.
Let's back up for a little reminder on the role King Charles has been invited to perform.
This is really going to be very, very similar to what the Governor General does each year.
The speech from the throne marks the beginning of every new session of Parliament, setting out the direction the elected government is planning to head in.
This is a speech that is being drafted by our government, by the Carney cabinet.
And this visit wasn't the king's idea. That's not how this works. He has to be invited by the Prime Minister. And don't expect to hear any of Charles's personal thoughts in that speech.
He does not get to have an opinion on it. That is the whole point of having a constitutional monarchy.
It's old hat for the royal family. The monarch does it every year in the United Kingdom.
My lords, pray be seated.
But outside the UK, now that's unusual.
Your Majesty looking radiant as usual.
Charles's mother, Queen Elizabeth II, only ever delivered it twice in Canada. First in 1957, queen for only a few years at that point.
There was a very different sentiment towards the monarchy at that time that we can't ignore. So it was a really big deal in 1957.
Tens of thousands turning out for a glimpse.
I greet you as your Queen. Together, we constitute the Parliament of Canada.
And then she did it again in 1977 as part of a tour marking her 25 years on the throne.
The new generation fill me with confidence for what Canada can become.
Is a throne speech read by the monarch always just a ceremonial gesture? Well, the Queen did open Parliament in Grenada in the 1980s. It happened to be right after the island was invaded by the United States. Read into that what you will.
And now the speech will be read here in Canada by a king for the first time. Why right now? Well, arguably, it's about the Americans. Again, Donald Trump in particular. In an interview with British broadcaster Sky News, Mark Carney admitted the timing is not coincidental.
I think the message that Mark Carney is trying to send is quite clear, that we have friends, we have allies, Canada is not alone, Canada is sovereign, Canada is part of the Commonwealth, Canada has a head of state that it's perfectly happy with.
And remember that word, warning?
And a warning.
What kind of warning?
We will defend our values, our traditions, our history, and because we have this constitutional monarchy, we will never be like the United States.
All of this will be spoken without words, of course, and Charles has been busy for a while communicating symbolically and silently as Donald Trump's 51st state rhetoric ramped up this year. Royal commentators saw the subtle signs.
The signs are there if you want to look for them, I can tell you.
An outing for Canadian military medals, a red tie worn when meeting Canada's Prime Minister, a maple tree planted on the grounds of Buckingham Palace. All so nuanced that this 24-hour visit to Ottawa feels loud.
I think it's definitely a pretty emphatic statement of the importance of Canadian sovereignty to Canada and to its head of state.
Prince Charles went to sea today, piloting a high-speed rescue launch off Pearson College on Vancouver Island.
Charles's affections for Canada are real. CBC's archives are full of images of the young prince, action man, the UK press used to call him, exploring this country. The eligible bachelor, always up for adventure. Basking in the limelight.
Very interesting indeed, I must say. Bloody cold.
And not afraid of having fun in front of the cameras. But those days are done. How times and titles have changed.
Not only is he Canada's head of state, he also performs that role for 14 other Commonwealth realms, including the UK, which has also been deploying its king, the sovereign of soft power.
Donald Trump has been very open about his respect, admiration, and even affection for the monarchy and for the king himself. We saw that when Keir Starmer presented him with that invitation.
He's a beautiful man, a wonderful man.
Back in February, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited Trump's White House with a letter in his pocket from the king, inviting the president for another state visit.
I think I'm going to keep that one.
You'll keep that one.
That's rare for a president in their second term.
This is really special. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented.
I think the government has decided that the way to get concessions out of Donald Trump is by flattery, is by playing to his ego. In a competitive international environment, you use the strengths you have, and if the monarchy is one of our strengths, then I think the government's quite right to deploy it.
In that same interview with Sky News, Carney didn't mince words about how that invitation played for Canadians.
I'll be frank, they weren't impressed by that gesture. Quite simply, given the circumstance.
Mark Carney's intervention on Sky News was really, really striking because it was couched in language you don't normally hear in international diplomacy. Keir Starmer would argue, I think, that he's putting the national interest above anything else, and he sees our national interest as in building bridges in as far as possible with the Trump administration. That isn't to say that Canadians don't have a right to feel awfully annoyed by that lack of solidarity.
It all leaves King Charles playing a delicate balancing act.
It certainly sometimes feels like the king is being used.
Quite frankly, he is. And it has been that way for 300 years. But he exercises his responsibilities. He does the kingly things with the consent and with the thumbs up of his prime ministers.
And with the full ceremonial visit, you know the cameras are on.
It's a pretty safe bet. Washington is going to be watching this very closely, but it's kind of a roll of the dice in terms of which way the presidential reaction is going to go.
No guarantees how it will land in Canada either.
There is always a risk.
And that is what?
We know that there are people who are angry with the monarchy. We know that there are going to be MPs at this opening who will be meeting the king who are anti-monarchists. They do not want a king at all. And so there is always a risk that there will be protests, unrest, ugly scenes.
Risks, of course, but already there are some rewards in the images alone. Smiling crowds, Canadian flags, and a sovereign whose mere presence says a lot before he's even said a word.